Dear friends, this is Yoli O from the Daoland program. We are going to do a Q&A in this session here on Instagram. Normally we do this on Facebook, but since I'm doing a campaign on Facebook, they repress the spread of the Q&A on Facebook, so now therefore on Instagram. At the same time I have a Zoom here with the students from the Daoland program. They follow different kind of classes, they have different kind of questions. You can write your questions in the comments, I will see them. Opdreef, welcome. I'll give you a wave. I'll try to do it as many times as possible. Nice to be here, to see you here, and it will be fun to hear your questions if you have any. Anything about Chinese medicine, about Daoism, about taijiquan, kung fu, neidan, things that has related to that. I will try to answer for you, and my friends here, they also have questions, and I've already heard a few of the questions they're going to ask me, so I'm going to have a little bit of headaches today because of the questions, and we're going to have probably a lot of fun. That is at least the idea, but also we're going to hopefully understand some things about Chinese medicine and kung fu a little bit better, with a better perspective in the Daoist culture, and hopefully also how Chinese medicine and so on actually works. Who wants to go first with that question? You wanted to go first, Chris, because yeah?
Okay.
Alright.
Okay, well it's basically, I teach Tai Chi in a bit of park now, which is very pleasant, but it used to be a graveyard, and although the stones have been removed, the skeletons, I believe, are still there. I don't find there's any negative, I hate to use the word energy, sorry, there. But I can remember when I first started learning Tai Chi and Qigong, my teacher recounted the story of how one of his students lived next to a graveyard, and when he practiced Qigong he'd feel cold, and so he was told not to practice there. But I haven't found anything like that. I'm just interested to hear what you think, whether I should stop teaching there or whether I'm turning into a vampire, or I don't know.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you heard the question, but Chris said that if you, he teaches taijiquan, and he teaches on a place which used to be a graveyard. They took away the stones. He thinks they left the skeletons there. As far as I know, if they clean all the stones away, they also take away the skeletons, and they rebury them in a mass grave or something like this. This is at least in most European countries and American areas, I think, the case. Unless when they're Native American burials, they just build houses on top of them. So I want to be free of that judgment if it's there or not, right? And then he said, like, I don't feel anything like a negative energy or something like this, and he knows that I always make jokes about the word energy, because in Chinese medicine there's no word for energy. That is a typical Western thing. So I always advise my students, if you want to get further with your practice with taijiquan or Chinese medicine or anything like that, try to avoid the word energy. It makes everything so much more easy, because you're actually going to start telling things for what they are, instead of trying to soften meaning by replacement terms that do not really mean anything. So that is a very important part of this question. That's why he had to laugh. You probably heard the laughing, because everybody always knows that whenever somebody uses the word energy in my groups, I go like, ah! Yeah, so this is now you know what kind of story I have usually. But the main thing is that he is practicing on this ground, and he asked me, or he asked in general, like, is it actually safe to practice there? And that is of course in the mind of Asian cultures, having a very strong belief in ghosts, and of course he's English. The English also have, what I understand, quite some belief in ghosts. They have a lot of ghost stories anyway in their programs. And well, the whole world, many people believe in ghosts in some way or another. So if ghosts exist or not exist, I'm not going to tell you like that. But from Chinese culture perspective, ghosts do exist, of course. Chinese medicine culture perspective, ghosts, spirits, they are the same category, almost the same category, because spirits is also a little bit more demonic. But all these kind of creatures that they see as the causes of a lot of our diseases. So in the way how we develop ourselves as a person, ghosts can influence us, and they are usually called evils because they are anonymous to us. And anonymous creatures, they are easier to do harm to you. So that is one of the main things. But I asked him to put this question also in this group because he asked it in other circumstances. I was like, okay, put it in the Q&A, because I also have an interesting story about that, 2 stories actually, that illustrate that as a Daoist, right, in my Daoist training. Because one day my Sifu Yao Shuande, he took me and a few other students up the mountain, and there was this feng shui place, the grave on the mountain overlooking the valley, and there's like, if you have a feng shui grave that is like built into the hill, the dead person is in front of it, there's like a front door, and there's like this sideways panels in which, so there's a sort of protected space that is actually where's the actual grave, and then this place is where you can put your whatever prayer papers that you are burning. Like we in the West, we put flowers on a grave, but yeah, in Daoism they say, why would you put dying things on the place of somebody who is already dead? Yeah, so that is not a very nice gesture. Or the same like when you are very romantically involved, why would you give somebody something that is busy dying? You don't like that person, right? I always loved giving flowers, but it made me look very differently towards the death of all kind of things. And especially when you are in Chinese medicine, you're involved with eating. When something is already dead, then at that moment it doesn't contribute to your health anymore. So if something has been frozen or anything like that, it doesn't contribute to your health in the way how Taoism sees health. Of course it keeps you alive, but that is not the same as being healthy, of course. So you can numerically, through your calorie measurements or whatever, you can be very much alive. But in regard to Taoism, you're already halfway on your way to become a zombie, because you eat corpses, then at that moment you also become one, because you are what you eat. This is not completely cynical what I mean there, because if you, for instance, you kill a chicken, you eat it, it tastes very different than when you kill a chicken, you put it in the freezer, and half a year or a year later you take it out and you eat it. You can feel that the chicken doesn't taste the same. But in the case of this grave, I was like, oh, but Sifu, isn't that disrespectful to do this? I'm going to tell you a second story later, which is much worse than this one. And he said like, oh, okay, yes, it is disrespectful, but it is because of this disrespectfulness that as a Taoist, we very often we pull ourselves in the night towards these graves, because we're basically challenging the ghosts to harm us, so that we can overcome the harm and become stronger, and as a result of that, conquer evil when it comes to us. But as a Taoist, you basically offer yourself to conquer evil. That's basically your life career, right? So you have to involve yourself with ghosts, spirits, and so on and so on. So it was part of taijiquan training, right? I don't think he did it with a lot of foreigners, but with some of the Chinese students, he did that at that time for a while. And he's a trained Taoist. He used to be chairman of the Taoist temple area on the Jingding. And most of the students there, they were very scared because they didn't feel capable to it. But fortunately for me, I had a similar experience with another teacher before, my teacher Liu. And he took me to a church and he said like, look, we're going to meditate here on the graveyard, right? And I was like, okay, you want me to meditate on the dead people here or something like that? No, it's going to be a little bit more exciting than that. That's basically what he said. He didn't say it like that, but he was a very serious person. But I translated for you because otherwise the story becomes really very boring. But what he did is he said like, look, this grave has a broken stone. And these were like this stone graves, Catholic graves, with a stone box and a cover on it. And he moved one part away. He said, I want you to meditate in here tonight. And I was young, so I didn't think about it. I was like, okay, no problem. and I climb into the thing, and he put the stone back in place, so it's really very dark. It's already in the night. So you're sitting there in a grave with the same intent as my Sifu later did, make us practice taijiquan on a grave. And then you're sitting basically in somebody's private space when he's dead, right? And everything in there was rotten. There was no person anymore, there was no coffin anymore, everything was already gone. But the skeleton, there were still pieces of the skeleton you could feel. So I was sitting in meditation in the corner, a bit scared, nervous, actually quite scared and nervous. Probably I looked green all over my face. And at a certain point you become a little bit restless because I had to wait until he come back. He says, don't come out before I let you. And so you meditate, you sit there. I was just big enough to touch with my head against the ceiling, so I would just sit and meditate. And he left me there for a few hours. I got really scared and moved around a bit. At a certain point I have my fingers in the eye socket of the leftover piece of the skeleton and so on. And then he took me out after a few hours, and I think it was the most scary thing I ever did in my life. But at that moment when I came out, he said like, okay, how are you feeling? I said, well, I don't feel very good. He said, well, that person probably cursed you now. Yes. And he said, now you understand what qi is when you don't pay attention to it. Right? Because qi is from the dead people. Right? But so qi is from what has been in the past, and you cultivate it, and at the moment when it becomes something in the present, it helps you. So your past, yes, the way how you cultivate yourself as a person, that is the qi that you are, that you have basically, right? And at the moment when you are, how do you say that, you are sitting in a grave, you're sitting with somebody you don't know, so that person really dislikes you very much and will do everything it can to harm you. So now you have to make sure you become calm enough to deal with that, because he will follow you. He's now stuck onto your body, and he probably is now a hungry ghost. He wants to eat you, maybe take over your body or something like this. So he didn't do anything to make it less scary. I haven't told the whole story to anybody yet so far, so this is the first time I tell the story as it happened. My wife doesn't even know the story, right? So I never told her. Because then she probably wouldn't have married me anyway. But the idea is that at that moment you learn to overcome your fears, right? So for Daoism, they want you to have this direct association. And there's a very interesting book from Lars Berglund. He's a Swedish professor. He investigated like what is qi actually, the character of qi, because he didn't believe this whole story about gas, and he went into all kind of research from old papers, and he also said like, look, if you look at the character, the way how it is etymologically made, what everybody sees as a gas radiating from boiling rice, that is what is being assumed in a particular kind of time in the Tang dynasty or something like this, or in the late Han dynasty, and then everybody copied that basically. I forget what he wrote exactly, but he said the character of course is much older, and the layout of the star, what everybody says this is the me action, the me character, is actually not the me character, but of the fields of the A direction, basically the Pakwa, which is the way how the plots on the land between the farms was being divided, with one part in the middle, and there were like 8 different plots radiating outward towards the middle in the village, where then also was the well of the village where everybody drank from. And he said like, so when you work the field, people also dig their graves from the people who died there, and they make markers, but over the generations of course people are forgotten. And when you look at Chinese culture, everybody always pays attention to their ancestors, and they try to keep ancestors alive over many generations, because they think that the work of these ancestors in the afterlife can help them to achieve great things in this life. In the same way, when you are cultivating yourself from your past to your present, that means your life story, you see it as an important part of your life. You don't complain about your past, but you make it into your strong force. You make it into your future basically. And at that moment you gradually oh, taste for wine. That is not very healthy. Hi, taste for wine. Nice to meet you. You you develop yourself more concretely at the moment when you are how do you say this? Take your past towards your future, right? So you really want to take your life story, be very conscious of your life story, and you don't need to be proud of your life story, but you certainly don't want to judge yourself as being negative. So if your parents were bad for you, that's good for you. If your teacher at school was bad for you, that's good for you. If something bad to you, somebody beat you up or anything like that, that's not necessarily bad for you, that's good for you, as long as you make it good for you, right? So you want to use it to develop your own morality and your empowerment in your life to make sure that you become a good person, and use all the things that happen to you to make sure that you are not going to be like anything that happened to you, and that you are going to avoid anybody in your environment doing something like that to others. Like for instance, when you become a Daoist, you make a lot of oaths, and basically the oath that you make as a Daoist is the oath of a knight. So for instance, you're making an oath to always protect the vulnerable ones against the strong ones. So you work basically for the poor and the destitute. You don't work for the rich. If you work for the rich, then at that moment you're not a Daoist, you're a marketeer, right? So that's very different, right? So that's a very important part of this Daoist thing. And at the moment when you are in a grave and you feel the threat of that kind of evil, you recognize it in things. Like when things are alive, you know, they are feeling good. Like you walk through the city, you see a tree that feels good, you see a bit of grass, or you see a butterfly passing by. All these kind of things feel good. When you pay attention a lot to all these little pieces of nature around you, then at that moment you feel continuously empowered because you're one with that nature, because you're nature too. The air around you is nature. Yes, the soil underneath the asphalt is also nature. So you feel nature's everywhere around you, and humanity is just a guest in there, like the Americans in the Americans. And I know a little bit about my history and everybody else's history too, fortunately. And Joshua is laughing because he's part Native American. He knows the story probably also, that the Native Americans, they have this story about Westerners, like, oh, look, the Spanish were here for 500 years, they left. So the English, the Germans, they come here for a few hundred years and they will leave too. So eventually everything is going to fall back to the natives again. So that's a nice story. All of nature is there waiting basically for us to do all the wrong things until we learn from it or we disappear, right? That's basically the whole idea. And Daoism agrees with that. It says nature is a great force. It's basically the root force of everything. It's the wuji in Daoism. And at the moment, when you look at this, you can see that because of this root force, you can take from that and grow also at the same time. And then when you do that, you see that city life isn't as big. All the artificial things, they smell bad, like the houses and the cars and everything like that. And you feel that they make you weaker when you are near them at the same time. So you also feel that you use them as a necessity, not because you like them. So this is what it's supposed to be, so that you use them more sparsely, right? So these are all the shared things, the dead things, right? That's the important part. Yes, you got that, Chris? So if you don't feel any bad things, then their graves have been cleared, so there's no bad things according to Daoism. If you do feel bad things there, that is really great, because then you can overcome all the bad things and you can make yourself better, and you can learn to respect both the living and the dead at the same time. Yes? All right, very good. I think that story is funny, right? I have a lot of these kind of stories actually. Anybody else has a question?
I was wondering about the ghosts. Are they trying to get you to take their place so they can leave?
I don't know who came up with that story, but no, I don't think so. No, the thing is that at the moment when you die, normally, most people, they live pretty unintense lives, even though they go through all kind of intense things, but they're not really very focused, they are very fragmented. So at the moment when they die, because of drinking, because of drugs, because of hard work, hard sports, all these kind of things. They have never really worked on the unity, like the unity of their life as a whole. That's when we talk about the chi before, right? Being alive is being unified at the same time. And so they're a little bit like scattered beings. At the moment when they die, they just disappear, right? What the Chinese say, you go to hell, right? Because you go to the underworld. Everybody goes to hell. I always like saying that because it still frustrates people sometimes with the whole idea. But at the moment when you have concentrated yourself, your life around something because you were obsessed about something, whether it's drinking or drugs or violence, or that you always wanted to have a particular result from your work, or you were always jealous or anything like that, and at that moment you're single-mindedly focused on something, and then you can become what is called a hungry ghost. And a hungry ghost hangs around the place where they are, what people usually call poltergeists in the West. You become a hungry ghost and you hang around on the place where you died, or maybe you wander around in nature for a while, right, until you lose the momentum of this hungry ghostishness. So all the hungry ghosts eventually disappear, unless when you're really very obsessed, and then you become like a sort of a pseudo-immortal, you can say. And many immortalist techniques in Daoism, they are basically using similar principles like how you become a hungry ghost, your meditation, your taijiquan practice, and so on. They have to teach you how to become single-mindedly focused on one particular kind of thing. Even the Buddhist tantric training, they focus mostly on making sure that you become like a very much focused something, that focused something after your death survives. And if you can put enough of yourself in there, you can bring it into a next life towards a new incarnation, or you can make it into a spiritualized being in nature as a whole, which is then called a Shen, or immortal. Yes? That answer your question, Josh? Okay.
Yes, it does.
The story of ghosts actually is very interesting, and as you know, I am busy with this whole series about Chinese medicine on the Patreon stories, and I started doing that as a promise to myself to create a sort of storyline about how Chinese medicine and Taoism as an intertwinement, how they actually are, how do you say, how they actually move to the different kind of realms. Like for instance in Taoism they say, okay, if you are born, you have the birthright to become an immortal, whatever kind of creature you are, but because of your obsessive nature, you will probably die. Because of your desires, you probably die. Because of your fears, you probably die. Because of your negative feelings, you probably die. And you see that how do you call it? The general idea of people is that if they are good people, they will go to heaven or something like this. Whether it's in Asia or in the West, it's a convenient thought. But Chinese culture basically says if you're not focused on what is going to happen later, you will never make that, right? So at the moment when you become suitable material for heaven in Christianity, it means that you have to be singularly focused on the Christian idea of heaven before you can even get there. So you have to become like a hungry ghost to get to heaven, so to say. So you create heaven at that moment. So as a hungry ghost also you create your own reality. And in that sense, it is very interesting to look into Swedenborgian religion, Christianity, who said that when you die, you are reborn as a ghost in a reality which is exactly the same like the reality where you come from. So you basically relive what you have created in your life, because he says that if you live that life, that must mean that you love that life. Otherwise, you wouldn't. So then, if you had created a terrible life, like for instance, your husband or your wife continuously beats you up, then in your afterlife that will also happen to you, because you chose that. I mean, whatever you choose in life to be the content of your life, that's your happiness, right? So happiness is not a feeling, but it is what is the content of your life. So if there's things happening in this Swedenborgian church that you don't like about your life, you have to change the content of your life. Taoism sees that also in some ways. It says like, look, if you simplify your life, you make everything very easy, simple, not complicated, and at that moment there's very little that you want. You can focus singularly on your being in nature, or being a human, being a real human, and at that moment, and then you will also become an immortal. Yes? All right. Any other questions at this point? Maybe anybody here on Instagram, if you feel like having a question, then please write it down below in the comments, and I will get to see it. I don't know how much delay there is, but I think there will be 1 or 2 minutes delay maybe, so make sure it's in time. I'm going to talk maybe 10 more minutes if there's any more questions, so then otherwise we can use it for the next time. Anybody has any question? Oh, Susanna is waving like he's crazy, so don't worry.
I was wondering,
yeah.
In order to help Western people who are into philosophy, what would be the connection between Stoicism and Daoism?
Yeah, that is some question that I kept myself busy with for a long time already, because there seems to be a lot of relationship between the Stoic nature of some Western schools of thought, in the sense that you try to be not affected by the things in life and just go through things as they happen. And in the hippie version of Taoism, they very often talk about similar kind of things about Taoism. There's a Neo-Confucianist school, and they emphasize that you should just take things as they are and let things happen. That's very Stoic in their nature, and there's a lot of Daoists that actually practice like that. They try to become neutral in their face, that you can't read their feelings, and they try to not be moved by whatever happens. The thing is that they say that if you're moved by your feelings, you're also driven by your feelings. So at the moment when you're driven by your feelings, you are easy to make mistakes on the basis of your feelings. In the West, of course, we love our feelings. We think they're the most important thing, and as a result of that we make mistake after mistake, and we do not really learn how to think, because we feel that our feelings and our intuitions are the same, right? While in fact they are impulses to a large degree from the perspective of Taoism, right? So don't think I'm trying to attack people as a whole. But from the perspective of Taoism, then at that moment you can say, okay, when you are willing to let life just happen without trying to interfere, because that's the idea behind it. If you don't try to interfere in life as it happens, then you get to a point where you can see how life actually works. Yes, and at the moment when you understand how life works, you can see the hinges and the openings in life that can move you, through the cracks of reality towards your immortal goals, right? Your immortalist goals, because that is basically what it is. You're basically just having goal to become an immortal as a Taoist. All the other things are not that important. That is why Daoists are very bad husband material or wife material in China. Nobody wants to marry a Taoist because they're only busy with these kind of things. And they're not really that much busy with their family, so don't tell my wife. Or my kids. My wife is from there, so she knows. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
As a Daoist.
What?
Sorry. I was going to say, but as a Daoist, now that you have a family, it's your responsibility.
It's also my responsibility to take care of it. Yeah, it's very paradoxical. Yeah. So, but you can at some point you can come to the conclusion in your marriage, like, okay, I've done all my responsibilities. The kids are now ready to do things by themselves. My wife can do by themselves. So then this is the point where I could go away with the least damage, right? So there's moments in every relationship where you grow towards each other and you separate, and there's moments where separation will be painless, and there's moments where separation will be painful. So if you understand life, you can understand which moments are the best moments to separate. If you plan to separate, that is just for everybody, of course. You do that at the moment when you do the least damage, because that much damage for your partner is also the damage to yourself at the same time. Yes? Yeah. But that's right what you said, Lucas. When when you're a Taoist, of course, you have the more responsibility once you're married to take care of that marriage the best way you can. Yeah. What did you want to say, Josh?
That reminds me of the Zhuangzi story when his wife died, that he was celebrating because he'd already done right by her, and so he was, understanding of the whole situation.
Yeah. Everybody who comes to me with questions about losing somebody because of death or something like this, I always tell this story. So I always say to people, like, make sure in Daoism, there's for dying people, there's two tips basically. One is make sure you never do short on anybody. So everybody, make sure to everybody, not just your wife or your husband, but to everybody, just make sure that you try to never wrong them, right? And there's this ritual in Taoism where you try to get rid of your guilt by praying to the different gods to take the petitions against you away before you die, because you might by accident have stepped on a grave. We talked about that before. You might by accident step on a grave. So as a result, that when you end up in hell, you're going to be punished for that. So that they make your punishment lighter. Of course, you can never exactly know when you stepped on a grave, because throughout history, people have been buried in all kind of places. So the chances that you stand on a grave sometime in your life, especially when you go out in nature, but even in cities, is actually pretty big. So if you happen to live on a grave, you know that you live on a grave, better take a Taoist ritualist to make sure that you are forgiven for that and you buy off the gods that have to punish you at that moment, if you're a Taoist, of course. If you don't believe in Taoism, you shouldn't do that. These kind of things are complicated. So this is one part. So don't do anything wrong to anybody. Make sure that everything is fine. The other part is a little bit more complicated, and I think it will take a little bit too much time for today to talk about that part. So I will leave that for another time. Is that a good idea? Yeah? All right. Very good. Any other questions at this point?
Yes. My friend has a question.
Hi.
Oh, hi. Hello. I didn't see you before. That's very nice that you're here. Were you also here with the taijiquan class?
Pardon?
Were you also here with the taijiquan class? Or you just came in
Maybe
for the...
next time.
Oh, you just came in for the Q&A?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. What's your name?
Katie.
Katie. Hi, Katie. Nice meeting you.
Hi, nice meeting. I was just curious about your point that the ultimate goal of Taoism is to achieve immortality.
Yeah.
But could you expand on that a little bit more? Is that immortality within your physical self? Just expand on that a little.
Actually, I'm busy with this series, like I said, about Chinese medicine and Taoist medicine. And at this stage, I'm talking about immortality as a rule for all Chinese medicine practitioners. The whole point of Chinese medicine is to help people to become an immortal, right? And last week in my movie, I talked about the basic principles of that. And this week, I talk about a little bit more. And in the next week, I will talk a little bit more about that. So I think I best refer you to these movies. Chris will help you where to find the link. They're open movies. Of course, maybe it convinces you to become a patron too. That will be really nice. Yes.
Yeah.
And anytime when you have a question, you can always ask him for my WhatsApp or Facebook thing, and you just send me a message. No problem. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else has any questions before we close? No questions? So, how are you doing, Princess? Yeah? Are you doing good? How are we doing?
Oh, good.
Yes? You had a nice day? It's very warm?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It might have some rain in a couple of days, but it's been okay, but pretty hot out, so I've been to the pool a lot.
Yeah, your mom said that. Oh, that's nice. You have your own pool?
No, we go to the JCC, so we go over there.
Oh, smart.
And
You don't have to clean it.
oh, yeah. My cousin just got a new house and he has a pool with it, so that's really nice, but we just go to the JCC.
Yeah, smart. I take my children there too sometimes. It's nice. You also meet a lot of people, that's nice.
Yeah.
All right. I'm actually on the end of my class, so you came in a little bit late. But next time, just feel free to come earlier. And Kate, you're welcome anytime. Yes? All right. Well, if nobody has any urgent questions at this point, then shall we close the session for today? Yes? I'll first close the session here on Instagram. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue talking probably for a little while with everybody in the Zoom group here, because there might be questions which are not related to this, the purpose of this program. I will be here next week again, and we can do more. On Wednesday morning, I'm going to open up also, this is Dutch time, Central European time. I will do here on Instagram a Qigong related class, so you can practice with us too. It's a free class, so you can join it, and you can also every time on Friday come then for questions. Thank you very much for your presence. Thank you all for your participation also in this talk, of course, anyway. And now I have to go out on this Instagram. I don't know actually how to go out. I think I have to go, I have no idea. Maybe press on live, is this it? I've tried it before one time. Maybe it's like this. No. Oh, you can send it to your friends. This is something that I didn't know. You can do a lot of things with this, but of course I don't know. But it must be somewhere like a closing or something. Is it? Yeah. Invite to join, no. That's also not it. I don't know how to enter, how to leave this thing. Does anybody understand Facebook or Instagram, how that works? I have no idea. Does anybody knows how Instagram Live works? Facebook, I know.
What are you trying to do?
Try to stop it without losing the content, because you have to immediately save it also, otherwise you lose it. There's a question mark, is that it? No questions yet, okay. Wave. Hi Marcel, you're just too late. I'm just closing the thing. Did you find the message on Facebook? Anyway, I try to close the thing. Maybe it's the camera button that I have to press. No? I have no idea how to close this thing. Oh, Marcel, maybe you know about these kind of things. Do you know how you get out of Instagram?
So it says here, after a live stream, the live stream ends, you tap share the story at the bottom of the screen. Note, live video replays includes likes and comments from the original live video.
I don't see that. I don't see it here. I see here we are logged in for 38 minutes. Oh, maybe I have to first set the text out. No. Go live in a room. No. That's not it. Must be a way to go out. I have no idea. I don't know how to go out.
Doesn't say end or anything. Did you try the view on the phone to a widescreen, maybe?
So there's nothing. There's nothing on the bottom.
What about that red little box up top?
Yeah, I tried that. It just switches between mentioning live or the time that we do. When I put it across, yeah, I found it now. Before I pressed on the cross, it didn't work.